Well, my first year as a freshman was, at first, I was just looking at everybody else. I felt insecure. I didn't know what to wear. Out of my meager wardrobe, the first day I just didn't know what I should wear. I didn't know what was appropriate. Now, Mrs. Margaret King, Mama King, Slater's mother, would advise me later on, but this was at the beginning. And so, even though my father had an account there for my mother, he would buy her on anniversary, he would buy things. And he had shopped with her for a long, long time. But I did not have her advice at that time. So I just, picked whatever I had and wore it. And I for some reason, I can't remember what it was, but for some reason when I looked around at the other students, it just didn't seem like I had on the right thing. So I felt insecure about that. I didn't know how different college would be from high school or just what was expected. I wasn't used to the freedom, at high school, there was no lounging time. After class, you went to the next class until school was out. But here, if there was a class and maybe you didn't have another one until 2 hours later, you could go to the snack shop. So I had to get used to time and how to spend it wisely. But there was a man named Mr. Pettigrew, and he was, I can't remember his exact title, but one of the things that he did was to help freshmen. And he would go around doing surveys and finding out if there were two students with the same name, or he liked to find little oddities about people. And so he was talking about football and trying to find out what freshmen knew about football. And for some reason I knew quite a bit about it. I guess I had been going to the games at Monroe, and then my father watched TV. We were probably the first blacks to get a TV in our neighborhood, because you could tell then by the antennas. And so my father had worked at the Marine base, and he bought one from a serviceman who was being shipped somewhere. So that's why we had a TV and could see the games.
What year was that when he did that?
Probably when he got the TV. Oh, I was in junior high school. We had it a long time, so it's probably 50. I'd have to count it up. Maybe 51, 52, but I'm not sure. So Mr. Pettigrew did his survey on football, and he said that out of all of the girls that he interviewed, that I had known the most, And so then he helped me with things that I did not know. And then I met Barbara Sanchez, who was Miss Albany State, and I liked her, and I just thought she was just great, and so I just wanted to do everything that she did, And she would take time and talk with me. She was very nice. She didn't act haughty or anything like that, and she was a friend with Lucia Holloway, and I thought they were very nice people. And they were Deltas, and at that time I was thinking, well, I want to be a Delta, And so my first year was really seeing what college was about, looking at Barbara and seeing what she was doing, and then deciding that, well, I didn't want to come here, but since I'm here, I'm going to take advantage of everything over here. I'm going to be in everything I can be in as a female. I knew I couldn't be in the fraternities, So that was my goal, to meet people and to let them know me and to be like Barbara Sanchez, and so I looked at the clubs that she was in, and I liked to sing in the choir. So it was just really adjusting to college on my own, because I didn't have adjustment to college until my senior year.
So when do things click for you? Was it during that freshman year or your sophomore year where you began to become this leader?
Well, some of it clicked a little bit in my freshman year, because the Alphas picked me to be Miss Alpha, and that did a lot for my self-confidence, because there were a lot of girls on campus who were pretty and who were, to me, sophisticated, and I just seemed like a little bumpkin from Corn Street. You know, my street corn. Every time that I would say it, they would laugh. And so that did a lot to help. And then being in the dramatics group, I became a part of that. And so, you know, and I always liked to write, but I wrote a lot, but I didn't do anything with it. I would just write. Sometimes I would write. I wasn't a journalist, you know, I didn't keep a journal, but I would write to myself some of my thoughts. So I just decided that, you know, Albany State was okay. You know, I wanted to go to Spelman and Bennett, but I'm here now, and I'll just take advantage of what's here. And there's some nice people. And 58, 59.
Okay.
And that's the year I joined the NAACP Youth Council also, which was not on campus. And I can't even remember how I came to join. And but I joined. But I can't remember what made me do it, or if Mr. Chapman, who was our advisor, if I spoke with him. But I joined, and that was also the year that I sat in at the Arctic Bear. And it was nothing planned. We had been going to the Arctic Bear getting food, but you couldn't sit on the benches outside. It was just for whites, even though there were no signs, we knew. But this time, after we got our food, something just came over me and said, I don't want to go sit in the car and eat. I want to sit on, you know. So I went there and did that. And it felt good, you know. And I went back on campus, and I was trying to tell people about it, but they didn't seem to get it. I mean, they just looked at me and said, oh, you know, but they didn't feel what I felt, because I guess they hadn't done it.
So that kind of pulls you into activism.
Well, yes, but also, I guess when you see things on TV, well, maybe back then, they're not exactly real to you. And then often what you see, depending upon what it was, could be controlled. I mean, I knew about the bus boycotts and things like that, but somehow they seemed far removed from me. It didn't really seem to it was happening to somebody else. And so when I went to the Arctic Bear and I did that, I came away with this feeling of, oh,
empowerment.
You know, but nobody else. Wow. It was like when the kids I was telling on campus, they just said, oh, and they looked up, and I was thinking, well, maybe something is wrong with me, you know, maybe I'm making, you know, but I just felt, and I went and told my parents, you know, and I felt good. My grandmother she didn't take it too well, you know, she was always very scared of everything and superstitious. But, so.
Okay, so let's fast forward. When do you first meet Charles Sherrod and are aware of SNCC?
I met Charles Sherrod in October of 1961.
And what's your interaction with him?
Well, he and Cordell Reagan came on Albany State's campus, and they said that they had talked with some people from the Lincoln Heights Improvement Association, that they had given them my name and Bernice Johnson's name as students to talk to on the campus. And so I was thinking of the people that I knew in that association, so it had to have been Slater King and also Irene Asbury, because she, she had come as the new dean and had a workshop that summer, a leadership workshop with all of the student leaders and with the student government. And so the fact that he had our names and he mentioned that, and you know, those were trusting days, and Sherrod has he has a way of making you trust him. He was very soft spoken. Cordell was different. tense and wound up very tight. It was very intense. And I'm not saying I didn't trust him, but Charles was more soothing and calm, and he was a minister, and so all of those things, made it very easy to talk with. And I talked with him on the campus, and he told me about SNCC. Well, I think SNCC had been formed in 1960, so that I didn't really know a whole lot about it, but I knew that Leviticus had gone to Atlanta to meet with Julian Bond and some other people to talk about the Southern student movement and wanting Albany State to support it. And so Charles Sherrod said they were coming to set up a voter registration campaign. And we just sort of started talking, and he'd ask questions about things in Albany. So it just got to the point where we were talking about the NAACP Youth Council and things that were not right in Albany. And then he mentioned the ruling that was coming up about desegregating public traveling facilities. And so he started having meetings, and I would go to the meetings, workshops, and there was one workshop, a nonviolent workshop held at my house, and he would train us, in nonviolent.
But technically, you guys were not, on the books as members.
No, I didn't become. Well, I was made a member of SNCC after I had worked. See, I worked very closely every morning. During the summer, I got up at the crack of dawn and went to SNCC's office to clean up. I was there all day. My mother was having fits because she was expecting a baby.
This was 1961, right?
And so, well, actually, it went on and on because she wasn't expecting the baby then. She was expecting the baby later. I worked for, I guess, 2-3 years. But I just had set a pattern. And so I would go to the office, run off flyers, and then pass out the flyers, whatever was needed to be done in the office. I would do it typing, meetings. I just stayed there. And it was only after I had worked maybe for a year and a half or so, or maybe 2 years, that I went to one meeting, and all of the SNCC field secretaries were there, and they said that they had decided that they wanted me to become a member of SNCC. There were I wanted 12 left in Albany because Pritchard had arrested all of them. So I was number 13.
Do you remember when that was? What year that was? It had, well, let's see, it was either the summer of 1962 or 1963. Wow,
and
you guys have been working with SNCC long before that in different activities?
Since 1961.
Wow, but y'all technically were not members.
No, we were not members. Wow. Now, some people may have become members, but we were working with SNCC. And
sort of like a cooperative of different community groups organizing behind the single cause of ending segregation and Jim Crow in Albany.
Well, see, it was similar to the Albany movement. All of the organizations came together, except NAACP, to form the Albany movement. And so did SNCC. But the students, it's a technicality, but the students, although they were working with the Albany movement as a CAP organization, we were really with SNCC because we were not, we just left the NAACP Youth Corps because they didn't believe in the same things that SNCC did, and we believed in the same things that SNCC did: direct action, jail, no bail. And so
was that in '62 that happened? The students leave the NAACP Youth Council, or was that in the fall of '61?
It was in '61, I believe, because that's when Cordell and Sherrod came, and that's when that ruling was to go into effect, and that's when we wanted to demonstrate. And then we did not demonstrate because Miss Hurley said, that we would be left high and dry and all of that. So I'm thinking it had to be 61.
That November.
Maybe early 62.
Mm-hmm.
But
okay.
When you put it that way, it doesn't seem that we worked that long, But I worked with the movement until I went back to Spelman. See, that was a semester where I didn't have to go to Spelman. They offered nothing I needed for graduation. So I came home and I worked with the movement until I had to go, that summer of 63, until I had to go back to school in 60. No, I worked the summer and I worked the first semester because I went back the second semester to finish. And it was 64 then.
Okay. Okay.
So I stopped working with the movement in 63, in probably January of 63, when I went back to Spelman.
Okay, but rewind us back.
Okay.
I want to get to the fall, November of 1961. Tell me what's going on Albany State's campus with the students and with you.
Okay, well, November 1961, I was preparing for the coronation because I had been voted on as Miss Albany State the following spring, the past spring, May of 61. But behind all of this, I was going to meetings. I went to the first meeting that was called, and it was at Bethel. Reverend Ben Gay was the minister. And at that meeting, there were people from the community. There were some ministers, Albany State students, mostly the ones that Bernice and I had talked with, and Sherrod had talked with a few more. And one student that we knew was a spy for the administration, because none of what we believed in and what we were doing, was what he believed in. So we knew why he was there.
What was his name?
What was his name?
Mm-hmm.
Robert Bowens.
And everybody knew he was the spy.
And the next day, of course, we were called in, and I was told that my name was given. I was told that my name was the only one given, but I think that was a tactic. I think that each person that was called in was told that, but I don't know. And so at the meeting, it was, I had never experienced anything like this. Here were these two young men, basically my age, who knew all of these things that I didn't know about the government, about the laws, about segregation, about what you could do, about making change. They taught us freedom songs. They talked about nonviolence and direct action, words that we just weren't familiar with. And when I left that meeting, I couldn't sleep. It was all of my life, I had things happen to me, and I felt helpless. Because before, I'll say when I was maybe 5 or 6 or 7, when I really knew about segregation, and that my parents didn't keep the Pittsburgh Courier from me, and I saw pictures of lynchings and all of that, I thought this is how it was. This is just how it is, and it's always going to be this way. I didn't know it could be changed. I didn't know that it wasn't supposed to be that way. And I didn't find that out until maybe junior high school. And then I realized it doesn't have to be this way, but how can I make it not be this way? So I didn't have any way to express myself. And Attorney King made this statement at a mass meeting. He said, Charles Jones coming here, Charles Sherrod coming here. They helped give form, to the discontentment. So, and I said, that's it. That's what it is. This lump, this discontentment in my throat, all of this resentment. I had no way to get rid of it. And then I said, and here, now, listening to Sherrod and listening to Cordell, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. It was like all my life I had been geared for this moment. And I went home and tried to talk to my parents about it, but I was so into it that I wasn't being realistic in my speech. I was just I was just so up in the air.
You were a dreamy teenager.
They were looking at me, you know, and so after that, there were more meetings. You know, that was a big meeting. But then there would be smaller meetings. And the high school students were involved too. There would be meetings at Shiloh. The high school students mostly would meet at Shiloh. And then when the meeting came to my house, see, we lived with my grandparents because, well, my aunt died and left my father's the house, and he sold it. And he repaired his in-laws' house. So then they said, well, you know, you come on, you can stay here now. And so that's how we were all there together. But the house was still in my grandmother's name. So she was worried then because she had been watching TV and seeing stuff, bad stuff happening to people. And so, but no one ever told me I couldn't do anything. So I told them, I said, well, can I have a meeting here? And they said, okay. So Sherrod came and we had this nonviolent meeting, and he was teaching us, and you know, and it didn't work out very well with one girl because she didn't get it, and she slapped Blanton so hard I thought she was going to knock his head off. She thought, well, see, Sherrod told her to do it, but he didn't think she would do it. I think, but she didn't understand that she wasn't supposed to. She thought she was doing what he said. Anyway, so you know, he was getting us prepared and showing us how to hold your body if you were attacked, how to protect your head and to draw your knees up, things like that. And so that's what was going on. And while I'm getting ready to be crowned Miss Albany State, it was really weird to be picking out a dress and then thinking about marching and then being called in on an almost daily, weekly basis to threatened. When is the next meeting, and you're with a group that could get you killed, and do you realize what you're doing to the students? I said, yeah, I'm trying to help them, you know. And it was more than just that too. It was, we had already started a movement on the campus to get things corrected that were not right. There were no locks on the girls' dorm at McIntosh Hall. The food was poor. Insects had been found in it, and what was cooked was not enough. And every day the line stopped, and if you had a 1 o'clock class, you were late or you missed it, or either you didn't eat. So these things were not being addressed. And as Miss Albany State, I felt I owed it to the students who had enough trust in me to vote me into that high position to see what I could do. And I actually thought I could make a difference. And especially after Dean Asbury had come and she had shown us, you know, how student government was supposed to work, had given us a budget, and had made it possible for the first time for students to be on the college disciplinary board. And I was on the board. So I figured, well, I'm on the board, I can go right to the source with the problem and it'll be taken care of. But it didn't work that way. You know, all of us who went to the powers that be were told, you know, it was not our business, you know, and like, who are you to come saying this, or who are you to come reporting Miss Bird in the dining hall, you know, you're just a student, you know. So we weren't getting anywhere, and we were becoming a thorn in the side of the administration. And whereas once I had been happy that on the campus walking, President Dennis would pass by and speak to me and know who I was. I mean, I felt good about that. I had built a reputation, I thought, that would be lasting, and I was proud of that. It never occurred to me that it could change like that in a minute, about something so simple as correcting the problems on campus, food in the dining hall and locks on the doors. And then the white men coming down the campus. And I was on probation for AKA when these white men came in the dorm, and they weren't arrested. When they came out, the president asked them, what were they doing there? And he said he was looking for the main highway, and he showed it to him, and then he left, you know. So I was trying to write a speech of gratitude, you know, my acceptance speech, and it was just, I was being torn two ways, because the speech was becoming more and more meaningless to me as I wrote it. I was just more interested in SNCC and in working with SNCC and doing those things.
So this dilemma keeps you from participating in the first efforts to test the ICC ruling on November the 1st of 1961?
Well, first of all, we were told not to do it by Miss Hurley. Mm-hmm. And so we decided that we weren't going to do it. And then I think it was the day before coronation, I was called in again, and Reverend Brown, who was the director of field services, he did most of the talking. He said that if I didn't tell them about the next meeting or what was going on, that I would not be crowned. And so I told him, I said, well, and I actually didn't know when there was going to be another meeting, and I just told him, I said, I don't know. And so he was leaving it at that, and so I said, well, could you please tell me whether or not there'll be a coronation or not? I said, because if there isn't, I have to make a lot of changes. And so then Dean Miley said, oh yeah, that's going to be a coronation, that's going to be a coronation. But Reverend Brown was just trying to, threaten me. So I think the coronation was the 2nd of November, the next day. And after I got up, I don't know, I felt that I needed to say what I wanted to say to the students. But the speech that I had written contained other things too that no longer were true for me. And so when I said it, I didn't feel it really. And see, at that time, I was dating Blanton, and there, a lot of things had gone on. He had been asked to leave the campus. He was forced to move off campus, and he was not supposed to be on campus, but he came to the coronation and stood in the door. He just stood in the door because he didn't want to. And he would drive to my house, and the police would follow him because they would park on Corncross Monroe. They would park on Monroe, and sometimes they would stay there until he left, like on Sunday nights. And one night he was beaten after he left, And so it was just a time of confusion for me and uncertainty, because we'd never marched before. All of us didn't know what to expect. We knew what we'd been told, and we knew what we had seen on TV, but we'd never experienced this in Albany. So it was just, and my parents were so excited about me being Miss Albany State. It was really their time. And as I stood there and I looked at my mother and father, and they had just spent so much time getting dressed, and my father was excited because he was going to meet a president of a college. My father didn't go to school. He used to go and carry his cousin's books so people would think he had been to school, but he could do math like I don't know what. Anyway, Fannie Ray, President Dennis's secretary, took him over to meet them. And I saw them shaking hands, and I was looking at my father's face, and he was, I could tell what he was thinking, that here I am, who I am, and I'm meeting a college president. He was so proud. And I said, well, this is for them, this is for them. And then when he dropped the crown, on my head, instead of just placing it, he just held it above and let it go. And the crowd murmured, and I was wondering, I couldn't see my parents then. I was wondering what they thought or what they felt, because actually I didn't talk a lot about President Dennis to my parents at home. I talked about SNCC and about what was going on in Albany and the bus station and that, but I didn't talk about President Dennis. So it was only after the coronation that my father began to get an idea of what President Dennis was saying and doing. I don't know, maybe I just didn't want them to know that I had been called in to the office of the president and told that I was, doing things that weren't good for the college. So,
okay, but back to, okay, you had this dilemma over here, so you went through with the coronation. Now, we had a discussion earlier today about some of the students that chose to act in defiance of what Ruby Hurley said. Now, do you remember any of them talking about that and what happened, or Charles Sherrod talking about what happened?
I remember that Charles Sherrod talked to them. This is what I heard.
Okay.
That Charles Sherrod talked to this group of students, and that they were members of the NAACP Youth Council, but they were mostly the high school students. Because I'm trying to think of, I can see this fellow's face, but I can't think of his name. But he was one of the ones who went, and that they had to be convinced. And I never knew that they were afraid. I thought they had to be convinced because of Miss Hurley, So that was new to me. But I just, and it was only afterwards, after it had happened. I didn't know it was happening. It was after it happened that I found out. And see, that's what I meant by people being privy to information that we always didn't know. I did not know that, Irene Asbury obviously knew about Celine McCullum and all of that. I had no idea about any of that. It was only after it happened. And I found out because I think Blanton was supposed to, we were supposed to meet or something, and he didn't. And that's when I found out about what had happened that day, because he told me. Because he had taken Celine to Asbury's house and all that, so all that was going on. And I knew nothing about it.
Okay. Now, you've had the coronation and all the drama that ensues with Dennis now being upset about your activities. And we get to the time of exams and right before the holiday. What happens with the students to make it where you guys are now going to be involved in another effort to try and integrate the bus station? Tell me how things are going on campus, and then how things end up happening at the Trailways bus station.
Okay, before the things happened at the bus station, I was trying to remember. That was an incident that happened, and it resulted in people being fired, because I was fired from my job that was a volunteer job. And since the bus station had not worked out the way you wanted to work out on the 1st, another day, well, before that, the Albany movement was formed, November the 17th. And that's when it was no longer just us following SNCC or working with SNCC, because then everybody, when all of the organizations got together, then the Albany movement was working, getting organized, getting the officers so that they would be in charge. Everybody would have an input, but they would be in charge, so you would sort of get your marching orders from them. And so it was decided that on November the 22nd, that students would test the facilities. Now, Ms. Hurley agreed for the NAACP students to go, because they were going to bail them out right away. So when Evelyn, Tony, and that group went down, they knew that they weren't going to stay in jail. So they went down and they were arrested. I think they stayed in jail about 4 hours. Well, this was the break for Thanksgiving, and most of the students lived, you know, in rural areas, and they rode the bus. You had a few who would fly, but these rode the bus. So they would walk from Albany State, dragging their luggage across that bridge. And so this was the time when they were going to the bus station. And the NACP group went down that morning, and then that evening, later on, Blanton and Bertha went, and they were coming from SNCC. And so they were prepared to stay in jail, and they went to try to buy tickets where the NACP group had gone to I think they sat in the waiting room. They had not tried to buy tickets. So as the students came in, some people said that, well, as the students came in, they were filling up the bus station. Dean Minor, who had become dean after Asbury, came down, and he went into the bus station. Reverend Brown stayed in the car outside, and he told the students to get up out of there. They didn't belong there, to get over to the colored side. Well, I think some of them did. Many of them went over to the colored side, but Bertha and Blanton didn't. And they went over and tried to purchase tickets, and they were arrested, and they refused bail. So that was why the Albany State students led that first march. And there were more, almost the whole campus went. We were going to protest the trial of Bertha and Blanton. And so the students, we went over the night before and talked to them in the dormitories. We had no idea that they were coming. And they were late coming, but they came.
That's when you and Bernice Johnson Regan were walking alone at first, and then you wouldn't look behind you.
Well, I looked back. She wouldn't look back. But we went over, and, you know, they weren't there, and except just a few. And so we just started out, and the few that were there, maybe 5 or 6, I don't know, they were straggling behind us, because Bernice was sort of upset, and she was walking fast. And I was trying to keep up with her, and the wind was blowing in our faces. And then I looked back and saw all of these students, and the first one I saw was Laura King. I remember her face. I don't know, whenever I think of that march, I see her face. And almost the entire campus came. That was the largest group. Well, after that, you know, it was only maybe 40 or 50 who participated, because that march, faculty members were sent downtown to check it out and to see who was there and all. Well, there were so many they couldn't really point out everybody, but I know that they saw me because I looked right in their face. I saw Mr. Chatwell, I saw Lawhorn, and
were you guys arrested on this particular?
No, this march,
okay.
no one was arrested. They sent out the fire trucks to frighten us, but we didn't budge. And
they break out the hoses?
No, they didn't do the hoses. They just put the siren in. Well, see, this was new to them too. They hadn't thought of a lot of things that they thought of later. You know, they could have brought out the hoses, but it just, I guess it didn't occur to them. And so, but of course the paper said that we scattered, but we didn't. And also they had quotes, the Albany Herald had quotes. They heard somebody say, and this is how it was written, "My feet's hurt." Well, nobody said that, you know, but this was not written for us. This was written for the other people. So after that meeting, after that march, we were asked to disperse maybe 2 or 3 times, and we didn't. But finally, Charles Jones did a prayer. And then we left and went back to Union Baptist Church. And but we were joined by people from the community, because some people came from Shiloh, but it was just that this was Albany State's big march, and you know, it was the only time that all of the students participated on such a level. And we went back to Union Baptist Church, and had a small meeting. There were ministers there, and SNCC was there, and we decided to demonstrate on campus. So we marched down through the administration building, through the library, and through the classrooms in the science building, and trying to get other students to come out. But the ones who didn't march with us didn't come out because they didn't come to the march, so they certainly weren't going to come out then. So we just sort of left and went to SNCC's office, you know. I think we went under the flagpole and sang a song or two before we left. Well, see, we got the letters. Bertha and Blanton got their letters while they were in jail. We got our letters in January, I think. Because I remember the postman told me, don't worry. I said, they're getting these letters all over town. I said, but don't worry. I said, we're not going to let this happen.